So I've had OCD throughout my entire life. It literally led me to being in a mental hospital by the time I was 19. There isn't a time that I can remember that I didn't have OCD symptoms. My earliest memory of OCD is when I was like 3 or 4 and my hands were like bleeding and chapped because every single time I pet our dog, I had to wash them. I also remember having sleep anxiety because of Swiper from Dora. I truly thought he was gonna come and swipe me while I was sleeping, so I would like barricade my door, but like still needed to keep the door open, so I had like chairs blocking the door. I physically couldn't get him out of my head. Like, he was such a trigger for me. When I grew up a bit and started making friends, I remember not being able to let things go. If somebody said something that scared me, it didn't just scare me for a minute, it scared me for hours, if not sometimes months, depending on what was said. I like to say having OCD is like having thoughts that are sticky. It never just lets a thought pass through. It's like, wait, let's analyze this. If you didn't know, asking for reassurance is a symptom of OCD. But back in the day, I would consistently ask for reassurance from my friends, from my teachers, from like anybody who told me something scary. I'd be like, well, why? Like, why did it happen? Did you actually mean that? Like, is it really true? Just like trying to get some sort of relief or calm down from like whatever it was that was said. I got diagnosed with OCD at 19, but an important factor is that I was diagnosed with ADHD at around like 5 or 6, I want to say. But basically being diagnosed with ADHD, every OCD symptom I had up until I was 19 was blamed on my ADHD. Like, oh, she's just quirky. And I want to mention that OCD is often missed and misdiagnosed because it can coincide with so many different disorders like ADHD, like autism, and it can also cause other disorders that can mask OCD like anxiety, depression, eating disorders. I don't know about you, but OCD gave me all 3 of those things. Over a 10-year period, I developed 3 different types of eating disorders. It also gave me a few types of anxiety disorders and obviously also made me very depressed. But anyway, before I knew what a compulsion was, my family and I started calling my compulsions checks because I would check everything. I had a nightly routine that took me anywhere between like 45 minutes to like 3+ hours. This consisted of checking every single room in the house, ovens, doors, beds, closets. I would repeat a lot of checking, like if I already checked someplace and I didn't feel like it was checked enough, I'd go back and check again. I remember back in the day, we used to have movie nights on school nights sometimes, but my parents would always be like, okay, but you have to go do your checks before we watch the movie. So I would do my checks, I'd watch the movie, and then I'd go upstairs and continue doing my checks that they didn't know about. I had a whole pre-bed ritual. Like, I would check under my bed so often, so consistently, that my dad ended up having to take the rungs out of my bed and like place the mattress on the ground because it was that obsessive. Around the time I started hitting puberty, that's when my OCD started becoming like unmanageable. Things started to take a very drastic and dark turn, I'd say around 13. I was severely struggling in school and making friends. This is when my thoughts became so intense, I just started to become sad all the time, which I thought I was depressed until I actually became depressed down the line because of my OCD. But I would watch hours of videos about depression, about suicide, about self-harm. This is when I had started having compulsions surrounding self-harm to like stop my intrusive thoughts and constant rumination and like suicidal ideation. Not so fun. I would punch myself in the stomach. I would hit myself in the face. I would constantly be like using my nail to like rip my skin open. It just like, there's a bunch of things that I'm not going to get into. It was not a good coping mechanism, and it obviously didn't help anything. But yeah, around this time, my OCD started controlling every single aspect of my life. How I walked, how I talked, how I breathed, how I ate. I even started having little tics. I still do them sometimes, but I would be like, oh, I would have a lot of blinking tics where I'd be like this and I'd pretend like I had something in my eye. This is also when I started like evening out my body, right? Like if I stub my toe, sometimes I would stub my other toe. Or if I look too far that way, like to me, this side feels so uneven right now, so I'd have to look that way. And sometimes I wouldn't do it enough, so I'd have to keep on going back and forth and doing it. Or if I looked up, looked down, like sometimes I felt like the back of my eyes were gonna snap because my eyes were so sore because I just kept on like moving my eyes all around the place. I was raised Irish Catholic and I went to PSR, which is like CCD or like a Sunday school, but on a Monday evening. I had a teacher that I did not get along with. She did not like me. I definitely did not like her. She insinuated that like all of these bad things would start happening, like I'd become possessed and stuff if I didn't behave, if I didn't do my homework, if I didn't do this, you know, whatever. So I obviously did not let that go, and that became my main OCD subtype up until 19. It did alternate every once in a while, every few months. Like my main obsession would be health OCD. I would physically feel ill, and I would think I'd have like a brain tumor and I'd have a headache and I'd be so like, I convinced myself that I had these symptoms. Now, while all of this stuff is happening, I had a good 3 or 4 year period where I just did not make a single new friend. I had 2 long distance best friends who honestly still friends to this day. They're my best friends in the entire world. But besides them, I would only hang out with myself or my family. I stopped doing after school activities and sports. It got to the point where it was infiltrating every single thing that I did. I remember I did track one year and I would run with my hair down because the social suicide was better than me panicking over how many times I needed to wrap the ponytail around my hair. The numbers 2 and 3 were unsafe for me. Obviously, 1 is too loose and like 4 wraps were too tight, so I just didn't wear it. Also around this time, this was like the thralls of my eating disorders, which started at around 11. Like food obsession and body obsession started around then. I felt like it was the only thing that I could control. So I would just be doing these things where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go on a liquid only diet. I'm gonna be vegan. I'm gonna be vegetarian. I'm gonna be keto. Like, you name it, I've tried it. My main eating disorder was binge eating. It was technically bulimia because my purging was exercise, but at the end it ended up not just being exercise and, you know, being like actually like bulimia. Anyway, that was just impacting every single aspect of my life. I went to college and I was so excited because new space, felt really safe. Obviously, I had no rituals or compulsions in this new area until I started creating new rituals and compulsions in that area. And then I started self-isolating. And then I started becoming a bit more standoffish. And this was like a few months in, and I started becoming a bit more depressed. I ended up transferring colleges and then immediately dropping out like within the 2nd or 3rd week of that new college and going into a mental hospital. I talk about what exactly led me to going into the mental hospital in another NOCD video. It's called The Day My OCD Broke Me, if you wanted to go watch that one. But when I entered the hospital, I was at rock bottom, which turned out to be a blessing because it caused me to feel like I had nothing left to lose, so I gave it my all. I started exposure therapy and it changed my entire life. The therapist actually told me that they had never seen anybody do what I did, being as bad as I was, in such a short period of time. I started becoming like rapidly better because I was doing the most. Like if I sat down today and got tested, like I do not meet the medical criteria for obsessive compulsive disorder. I had actually met those requirements for the first time about 1.5 years in, and then I entered a very toxic relationship and my symptoms became out of control again. Never as bad as it was at the beginning. And it took me about another 6 months to get back on track and not meet the requirements again. But on top of that, I've also cured my anxiety completely, depression completely, all of my eating disorder symptoms gone. Also don't self-harm anymore, slay. I still do exposure and response prevention therapy today, which is why I am so symptom-free most days of my life, is because I consistently, every single time I see an opportunity for an exposure, I almost always take it, unless for some reason I'm not realizing that it's a compulsion or whatever. That is why I work with NOCD, because they do the exact type of treatment that got me to where I am today. I've moved 2 times completely alone across the Atlantic Ocean, once to Ireland, and now I'm living in London. Both places, I have a complete friend group. I've been able to travel 1 loop around the world. I did that by myself, meeting up with friends along the way that I made. I run my own business. I've been able to like date pretty normally. What I've been able to do with my OCD is by far my biggest accomplishment. And I remember thinking that it was such an embarrassment what I had been through, being in a mental hospital, having to go through all of those things, those mental illnesses that I had been through. But I'm like, why would I ever let my biggest accomplishment be my biggest embarrassment? I am more equipped to handle anything that comes my way with the amount of tools that I have in my box, better than almost all of the people around me who have never struggled this intensely or at all with any type of mental illness, which I think is a flex. I know it's a flex. My self-regulation skills up here. Yeah. I still have bad days, obviously, don't get me wrong, but like my absolute worst day with OCD now is out of this world better than something I could have ever possibly imagined on my best day with OCD 8 years ago. I'm currently living my dream. And it's all thanks to starting exposure and response prevention therapy 8 years ago and the support system I had that helped me get out of the spot that I was in with my family, my therapist, the hospital, myself. If you or somebody that you know is struggling with OCD, the best thing in the entire world that you can do is sign up for NOCD and start getting exposure and response prevention therapy and OCD treatment like as soon as you can. If I can do it, I was as riddled with OCD as you could possibly have been. You can do it too. I hope that this helps and gives you some sort of hope that someone is able to come out the other side and be happy and live the life that they've always wanted to live. Because I did not have that example, or didn't even know it was possible when I was first starting to get help with my OCD. Anyway, I hope that you have a fantastic day. Thank you so much for listening.